It seems like the Fed's probably going to cut rates at its September meeting, which is the next time it meets. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell is giving his annual address at Jackson Hole next week. Maybe that'll give some insight into where the Fed's head's at right now after this. But we also just had a jobs report for the month of July that came in well below expectations, which shows that the labor market is weakening a bit, and that could also speed up the calculus for the rate and pace of rate cuts. So yeah, it seems like there's going to be a rate cut in September at the meeting.
Welcome to Reporter's Notebook. We talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle, and I'm joined today by economics reporter Zach Halaschak. Zach, Vice President Kamala Harris is outlining her plan to deal with high prices. Give us some of the details of what she's proposing.
Yeah, so we're finally starting to get actual policy proposals that have, it's been several weeks now since it was announced that she was going to be the Democratic nominee or the presumptive nominee. And it's kind of been quiet on the policy front. She hasn't really given any interviews to reporters. So now we're starting to get this. And the first policy proposal that she has is basically applying price controls. Inflation's the biggest issue facing households right now. People are fed up by how much groceries cost, how much everything costs across the board. So her idea to solve this is to basically compel the government to say, look, companies, you can't raise prices beyond this level, and then penalize them, or we don't really know the exact details of the plan, but basically to tell the government to tell companies what they can charge. That's
so in a roundabout way, price controls.
Yes, exactly, and it's already faced a lot of criticism, especially from people on the right who point out rightfully that this really hasn't worked in other countries that have tried it. That it could lead to shortages at the grocery store because there's so much demand for these cheaper items. So it's kind of already being debated, in the policy corners of. But the other proposals for her lowering prices we haven't seen yet. She said there's going to be something on housing, but that hasn't been rolled out yet. So we're kind of in wait and see mode with those.
So Harris has received good news, though, in other respects on the inflation front.
Sure, yeah. Inflation, actually, the two of the inflation reports we watched three of them. The producer price index and the consumer price index, which is probably the most closely watched, came down last month, and the CPI actually came down to 2.9%. And it was the first time it's been below 3% since I believe it was March 21. So, right in the early days of Biden's presidency. That's obviously good news. She's going to get on the campaign trail, point out that inflation has been falling, annual inflation has been falling pretty steadily over the past year or two. Obviously, Republicans are going to get right back out and say, look, when you're looking, if you measure it from a year ago, sure, but if you're measuring the price of groceries or anything from when Biden entered office in January 2021, it's like 20% higher. And that's kind of the metric that Americans, I think, at the grocery store and,
Sure.
At anywhere they go are kind of looking at. It's not, oh, well, it's only increased by 3%, in the past 12 months. They're looking, well, this is how much more I'm paying now than before Biden was in office.
Right, a different baseline.
Yeah.
What might this augur for an interest rate cut?
Yeah, so for an interest rate cut, it's good news. Obviously, the Fed is trying to see inflation to fall to its 2% goal. But any declines like this are going to be good and show that inflation's moving in the right direction and give the Fed confidence to possibly cut. It seems like the Fed's probably going to cut rates at its September meeting, which is the next time it meets. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell is giving his annual address at Jackson Hole next week. Maybe that'll give some insight into where the Fed's head's at right now after this. But we also just had a jobs report for the month of July that came in well below expectations, which shows that the labor market is weakening a bit, and that could also speed up the calculus for the rate and pace of rate cuts. So yeah, it seems like there's going to be a rate cut in September at the meeting. The question, though, is whether it's going to be a normal 0.25% rate cut or it's going to be a half percentage point rate cut. And I think that's going to depend largely on what we see for next month's jobs report and then also next month's inflation reports.
We're going to fight shrinkage?
Shrinkflation, yes, we'll fight it.
Thanks, Zach.
Yeah.
You can read Zach and the rest of our policy team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.